Hi everybody. As we start today's review, I'd like to take a moment to go back to the year 2013. It was a quieter, simpler time, where the Catholic Church had just elected a new pope, Drake was at the top of the charts, and a little movie called The Conjuring took everyone by surprise by giving audiences a more character-focused take on the typical haunted house movie and launched a franchise that would eventually gross over $2 billion. Jump to 13 years later, and things are surprisingly the same. The Catholic Church has elected a new pope, Drake is still on everyone's mind, and once again, The Conjuring has made its way back into theaters, with a new movie that will say goodbye to long-established characters and usher in a new era as the franchise continues forward. So, will The Conjuring Last Rites be a proper send-off to the old and a launching pad for the new? Well, let's find out, as we take a spoiler-free look at The Conjuring Last Rites. So, The Conjuring Last Rites is another movie that's based on a true case that was investigated by the world's most famous paranormal investigators. And no, I don't mean this guy.
Look at the bunny people! Do you think that this water buffalo witnessed those murders?
Ed and Lorraine Warren, who have been the main characters in all three of the previous mainline Conjuring movies, and who are once again called upon to help a family who is haunted by evil spirits. But there's just one small problem. You see, Ed has a bad heart. In fact, he's already had multiple heart attacks, and he physically can't do the job like he used to. So, the Warrens have decided to retire and stick to giving lectures on hauntings and paranormal investigation rather than doing investigations themselves, because apparently this is bad for the heart. However, in a small steel industry town in Pennsylvania, the Smurl family is having some problems. You see, unbeknownst to them, a haunted mirror has made its way into their home, and the spirits inside it are now making their lives miserable by popping out of the shadows, making strange noises, and just being a nuisance. Wait a minute. Why does this sound so familiar?
It's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
Anyway, with the help of their daughter Judy and her boyfriend Tony, Ed and Lorraine make their way to the Smurl's house to finally put an end to the haunting and send the spirits responsible back to hell where they belong, resulting in what is probably one of the most boring, tedious, dull movies that I've ever seen, made by a director who can't keep the camera still for longer than 2 seconds, has a script that feels like it was written by people who don't have any ideas, featuring characters that no one cares about, and is ultimately a giant waste of time. Now, in the past, when talking about horror movies, I've said that I appreciate it when a movie takes its time, because that usually means that the characters are going to be better developed, and strong characters tend to equal a better movie, even if the plot is weak. An example of this would be the first Poltergeist from 1982. Despite having some good moments, the plot is your typical haunting movie. However, despite this, the characters are so well developed and the audience has gotten a chance to connect with them so well that doesn't really matter. We're invested in the story because we're invested in the characters. The first Conjuring movie, which is by far the best in the franchise, is very similar to Poltergeist because it takes its time to develop the Perron family that's being haunted, as well as methodically building a sense of atmosphere and dread so that we, the audience, can better understand the terror that they feel in the one place that they're supposed to feel safe, their home. While doing all this, the first Conjuring simultaneously introduces the Warrens, establishing what they do, the methodology in which they do it, and how that job affects their lives as a family. By the time the Warrens and the Perrons actually meet, and the investigation starts, which is about 45 minutes into the film, all the characters have been expertly established, the stakes have been set, and the tension has escalated to the proper amount. The audience is never bored, and they don't want to look away from the screen. This movie, on the other hand, wastes a lot of time by spending a large majority of the first 2 acts focused on the Warrens, the 2 characters that we know very well because they've been the leads of 3 other movies and the connective thread through most of the franchise. Because of this, we don't actually know anything about the family that's being haunted at all. In fact, I don't think most of them have names. They're just kind of a generic haunted family who happens to live in a poorly lit house. And speaking of generic, I can't think of a better word to describe this movie because that's exactly what it is. It's just 2 hours and 15 minutes of shadows moving behind people, characters slowly turning around to look over their shoulder, other characters staring into shadowy rooms, jump scares, and crosses being turned upside down. Because, as we all know, it's not a Conjuring movie unless unless at least one cross is turned upside down, which causes the movie to feel less like a movie and more like a highlight reel of every ghost cliche from the past decade, which makes a lot of sense when you consider the fact that Michael Chaves, the director of this movie, has only ever directed other Conjuring movies, two of which, The Curse of Something I Can't Pronounce and The Nun 2, are considered by many to be the worst of the franchise. In closing, I will say that there is one bright spot in this dreadful bore of a film, and that's Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson, who play Ed and Lorraine Warren. In their tenure of playing these characters, they've consistently given strong performances, even when the movies that they've been in have been less than stellar. They both work really well together, have great chemistry, and together they've been the heart of the franchise, which has lasted 12 years. So much so that they often feel like a real couple, instead of just actors playing a couple on screen. And at the end of this movie, there's actually a very sweet and kind of emotional moment between the two of them that made it clear, to me at least, that no other actors could have played these two parts as well as they have. Honestly, it's kind of a shame that the franchise has to go on without them, but that's the nature of the Hollywood machine, I guess. Nothing ever truly stops, no franchise ever truly dies, and just when you think they're out of ideas, they'll just reboot it and start all over. So, with that said, be sure to be on the lookout for my review of The Conjuring Reborn when it hits theaters in the fall of 2035.